Upon that occasion, Subhuti inquired of the Lord Buddha, saying, "Honored of the worlds, by what name shall this scripture be known, that we may regard it with reverence?" The Lord Buddha replied, saying, "Subhuti, this scripture shall be known as the Diamond Sutra, the Transcendent Wisdom, by means of which we reach the other shore. By this name you shall reverently regard it." And why? Subhuti, what the Lord Buddha declared as transcendent wisdom, by means of which we reach the other shore, is not essentially transcendent wisdom. In its essence, it transcends all wisdom. The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "What think you?" Did the Lord Buddha formulate a precise system of law or doctrine? Subhuti replied, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha did not formulate a precise system of law or doctrine." The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "What think you, within the myriad worlds which comprise this universe, are the atoms of dust numerous?" Subhuti replied, saying, "Very numerous, honored of the worlds." The Lord Buddha, continuing his discourse, said, "Subhuti, the Lord Buddha declares that all these atoms of dust are not essentially atoms of dust, they are merely termed atoms of dust. The Lord Buddha also declares that those myriad worlds are not really myriad worlds, they are merely designated myriad worlds." The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Can the Lord Buddha be perceived by means of his 32 bodily distinctions?" Subhuti replied, saying, "No, honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha cannot be perceived by means of his 32 bodily distinctions." And why? Because what the Lord Buddha referred to as his 32 bodily distinctions are not in reality bodily distinctions, they are merely defined as bodily distinctions. The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "If a good disciple, whether man or woman, day by day sacrificed lives innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, and if another disciple adhered with implicit faith to a stanza of this scripture and diligently explained it to others, the intrinsic merit of such a disciple would be relatively greater than the other." Upon that occasion, the Venerable Subhuti, hearing the text of this scripture proclaimed and profoundly realizing its meaning, was moved to tears. Addressing the Lord Buddha, he said, "Thou art of transcendent wisdom, honored of the worlds. The Lord Buddha, in expounding this supreme canon of scripture, surpassed in perspicuity every exposition previously heard by me, since my eyes were privileged to perceive this most excellent wisdom, honored of the worlds." In years to come, if disciples hearing this scripture proclaimed, and having within their minds a pure and holy faith, engender true concepts of the ephemeral nature of phenomena, we ought to realize that the cumulative merit of such disciples will be intrinsic and wonderful, honored of the worlds. The true concept of phenomena is that these are not essentially phenomena, and hence the Lord Buddha declared that they are merely termed phenomena. Honored of the worlds, having heard this unprecedented scripture, faith, clear understanding, and firm resolve to observe its precepts follow as a natural sequence. If in future ages disciples destined to hear this scripture likewise believe, understand, and observe its precepts, their merit will incite the highest wonder and praise. And why? Because the minds of those disciples will have outgrown such arbitrary ideas of phenomena as an entity, a being, a living being, or a personality. And why? Because the entity is in reality non-entity, and a being, a living being, or a personality are ideas equally nebulous and hypothetical. Wherefore, discarding every arbitrary idea of phenomena, the wise and wholly enlightened were severally designated Buddha. The Lord Buddha, assenting, said unto Subhuti, "If in future ages disciples destined to hear this scripture neither become perturbed by its extreme modes of thought, nor alarmed by its lofty sentiments, nor apprehensive about realizing its high ideals, these disciples also, by their intrinsic merit, will incite superlative wonder and praise." Subhuti, what the Lord Buddha referred to as the first paramita, charity, is not in reality the first paramita, it is merely termed the first paramita. Subhuti regarding the third parameter, endurance, it is not in reality a parameter. It is merely termed a parameter. And why? Because in a previous life, when the prince of Kalinga, Kaliraja, severed the flesh from my limbs and body, at that time I was oblivious to such arbitrary ideas of phenomena as an entity, a being, a living being, or a personality. And why? Because upon that occasion, when my limbs and body were rent asunder, had I not been oblivious to such arbitrary ideas as an entity, a being, a living being, or a personality, there would have originated within my mind feelings of anger and resentment. Subhuti. 500 incarnations ago, I recollect that as a recluse practicing the ordinances of the Kshanti Paramita, even then I had no such arbitrary ideas as an entity, a being, a living being, or a personality. Therefore, Subhuti, an enlightened disciple, ought to discard as being unreal and elusive every conceivable form of phenomena. In aspiring to supreme spiritual wisdom, the mind ought to be insensible to every sensuous influence and independent of everything pertaining to sound, odor, taste, touch, or law. There ought to be cultivated a condition of complete independence of mind, because if the mind is depending upon any external aid, it is obviously deluded. There is in reality nothing external to depend upon. Therefore, the Lord Buddha declared that in the exercise of charity, the mind of an enlightened disciple ought not to depend upon any form of phenomena. Subhuti, an enlightened disciple, desirous to confer benefits upon the whole realm of being, ought thus to be animated in the exercise of charity. The Lord Buddha, in declaring the unreality of phenomena, also affirmed that the whole realm of sentient life is ephemeral and illusory. Subhuti, the sayings of the Lord Buddha are true, credible, and immutable. His utterances are neither extravagant nor chimerical. Subhuti, the plane of thought to which the Lord Buddha attained, cannot be explained in terms synonymous with reality or non-reality. Subhuti, in the exercise of charity, if the mind of an enlightened disciple is not independent of every law, he is like unto a person having entered impenetrable darkness, and to whom every object is invisible. But an enlightened disciple, discharging the exercise of charity with a mind independent of every law, is like unto a person having the power of vision in the meridian glory of the sunlight, and to whom every object is visible. Subhuti, in future ages, if a good disciple, whether man or woman, rigorously studies and observes the text of this scripture, the Lord Buddha, by means of his Buddhic wisdom, entirely knows and perceives that for such a disciple there is reserved a cumulative merit, immeasurable and illimitable. The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "If a good disciple, whether man or woman, in the morning, at noonday, and at eventide, sacrificed lives innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, and thus without intermission throughout infinite ages, and if another disciple, hearing this scripture proclaimed, steadfastly believed it, his felicity would be appreciably greater than the other. But how much greater must be the felicity of a disciple who transcribes the sacred text, observes its precepts, studies its laws, and repeats the scripture that others may be edified thereby?" Subhuti, the relative importance of this scripture may thus be summarily stated. Its truth is infinite, its worth incomparable, and its merit interminable. The Lord Buddha delivered this scripture specifically for those who are entered upon the path which leads to nirvana, and for those who are attaining to the ultimate plane of Buddhic thought. If a disciple rigorously observes, studies, and widely disseminates the knowledge of this scripture, the Lord Buddha entirely knows and perceives that for such an one there will be a cumulative merit, immeasurable, incomparable, illimitable, and inconceivable. All such disciples will be endowed with transcendent Buddhic wisdom and enlightenment. And why? Because, Subhuti, if a disciple takes pleasure in a narrow or exclusive form of the law, he cannot receive with gratification the instruction of this scripture, or delight in its study, or fervently explain it to others. Subhuti, in whatever place there is a repository for this scripture, the whole realm of spiritual beings ought to adore it, and reverencing it as a sacred shrine, ceremoniously surround it, scattering profusely sweet-scented flowers and pure odors of fragrant incense. The Lord Buddha, continuing, addressed Subhuti, saying, "If a good disciple, whether man or woman, devoted to the observance and study of this scripture, is thereby despised or lightly esteemed, it is because that in a previous life there had been committed some grievous transgression, followed now by inexorable retribution. But, although in this life despised or lightly esteemed, the compensating merit thus acquired will cause the transgression of a former life to be fully expiated, and the disciple adequately recompensed by the attainment of supreme spiritual wisdom. Furthermore, Subhuti, numberless ages ago I recollect that before the advent of Dipankara Buddha, there were myriad Buddhas before whom I served and received religious instruction, my conduct being entirely blameless and without reproach. But in the ages to come, if a disciple be enabled to rigorously observe and to study the text of this scripture, the merit thus acquired will so far exceed the measure of my merit in the service of those myriad Buddhas that it cannot be stated in terms of proportion, nor comprehended by means of any analogy." Again, Subhuti, in future ages, if a good disciple, whether man or woman, be enabled to rigorously observe and to study consecutively the texts of this scripture, were I to elaborate either the nature or extent of this merit, those who heard it might become delirious or entirely doubt its credibility. Subhuti, it is necessary to realize that as the meaning of this scripture is beyond ordinary comprehension, the scope of its fruitful rewards is equally incomprehensible. Upon that occasion, the Venerable Subhuti addressed the Lord Buddha, saying, "Honored of the worlds, if a good disciple, whether man or woman, having desired to attain to supreme spiritual wisdom, what immutable law shall support the mind of that disciple and bring into subjection every inordinate desire?" The Lord Buddha replied, saying, "A good disciple, whether man or woman, ought thus to habituate his mind. I must become oblivious to every idea of sentient life, and having become oblivious to every idea of sentient life, there is no one to whom the idea of sentient life has become oblivious." And why? Because, Subhuti, if an enlightened disciple retains within his mind such arbitrary ideas of sentient life as an entity, a being, a living being, or a personality, he has not attained to supreme spiritual wisdom. And why? Because, Subhuti, there is no law by means of which a disciple may be defined as one having obtained supreme spiritual wisdom. The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "What think you? When the Lord Buddha was a disciple of Dipankara Buddha, was there bequeathed to him any law whereby he attained to supreme spiritual wisdom?" Subhuti replied, saying, "No, honored of the worlds. Inasmuch as I am able to comprehend the meaning of the Lord Buddha's discourse, when the Lord Buddha was a disciple of Dipankara Buddha, there was no law bequeathed to him whereby he attained to supreme spiritual wisdom." The Lord Buddha endorsed these words, saying, "Truly there is no law by means of which the Lord Buddha obtained supreme spiritual wisdom. Subhuti, if there existed a law by means of which the Lord Buddha obtained supreme spiritual wisdom, Dipankara Buddha would not have foretold at my initiation, in future ages thou shalt become Sakyamuni Buddha. But in reality, there is no law by means of which supreme spiritual wisdom can be obtained. Therefore, at my initiation, Dipankara Buddha foretold concerning me, in future ages thou shalt become Sakyamuni Buddha. And why? Because in the word Buddha, every law is summarily and intelligibly comprehended. If a disciple affirmed that the Lord Buddha attained to supreme spiritual wisdom, it is necessary to state that there is no law whereby this condition of mind can be realized. The supreme spiritual wisdom to which the Lord Buddha attained cannot, in its essence, be defined as real or unreal. Thus the Lord Buddha declared that the ordinarily accepted term, the Buddhic law, is synonymous with every moral and spiritual law. Subhuti, what are ordinarily declared to be systems of law, are not in reality systems of law. They are merely termed systems of law. The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "Can you imagine a man having a great physical body?" Subhuti replied, saying, The Lord Buddha, discoursing upon the proportions of a physical body, did not maintain for these any real greatness. Therefore it is merely termed a great body. The Lord Buddha thereupon addressed Subhuti, saying, "Thus it is with an enlightened disciple. If he were to expatiate after this manner, I must become oblivious to every idea of sentient life. He could not be described as fully enlightened. And why? Because there is no law whereby a disciple can be approved as fully enlightened. Therefore the Lord Buddha declared that within the realm of spiritual law there is neither an entity, a being, a living being, nor a personality." The Lord Buddha addressed Subhuti, saying, "If an enlightened disciple were to speak in this wise, I shall create numerous Buddhist kingdoms, he could not be designated fully enlightened." And why? Because the Lord Buddha, discoursing upon creating numerous Buddhist kingdoms, did not affirm the idea of creating numerous material Buddhist kingdoms. Hence, the creation of numerous Buddhist kingdoms is merely a figure of speech. Subhuti, the Lord Buddha declared that a disciple may be regarded as truly enlightened, whose mind is thoroughly imbued with the law of non-individuality. The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Does the Lord Buddha possess the physical eye?" Subhuti assented, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha truly possesses the physical eye." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Does the Lord Buddha possess the divine or spiritual eye?" Subhuti assented, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha truly possesses the divine or spiritual eye." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Does the Lord Buddha possess the eye of wisdom?" Subhuti assented, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha truly possesses the eye of wisdom." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Does the Lord Buddha possess the eye of truth?" Subhuti assented, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha truly possesses the eye of truth." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Does the Lord Buddha possess the Buddhic eye?" Subhuti assented, saying, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha truly possesses the Buddhic eye." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? Concerning the sands of the Ganges, did the Lord Buddha declare that these were grains of sand?" Subhuti assenting said, "Honored of the worlds, the Lord Buddha declared that these were grains of sand." The Lord Buddha inquired of Subhuti, saying, "What think you? If there were as many rivers Ganges as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, and if there were as many Buddhist worlds as the grains of sand in those innumerable rivers, would these Buddhist worlds be numerous?" Subhuti replied, saying, "Honored of the worlds, these Buddhist worlds would be very numerous." The Lord Buddha, continuing, addressed Subhuti, saying, "Within these innumerable worlds, every form of sentient life, with their various mental dispositions, are entirely known to the Lord Buddha." And why? Because what the Lord Buddha referred to as their various mental dispositions are not in reality their various mental dispositions. These are merely termed their various mental dispositions. And why? Because Subhuti, dispositions of mind or modes of thought, whether relating to the past, the present, or the future, are alike unreal and illusory.